Hey guys, I got a couple really big stories today that I don't think are getting enough play in the media, so I wanted to bring them to your attention. The first one is going to be my favorite punching bag, Gavin Newsom. Listen to what good old Gavin has to say.
uh, Very emotionally attached to this reality. I can extend the same with a sister who quite literally lived in a cutout of the hallway because we didn't have more than one bedroom where I slept on the couch. With a mom who was working almost three jobs, two and a half jobs, and renting, and then rented out the spare bedroom for most of my childhood. The emotional attachment to the issue of affordability is real and raw, and for too many people.
Oh yeah, I agree. That's a sad story there. But let's actually look into the reality of Gavin growing up because it may sound a little different to you. Now this is on the EBSCO website and it gives a little bit of background to him. And it says Gavin Newsom was born October 10th, 1967 to William and Tessa Newsom. They divorced when Gavin and his sister Hillary were very young. Okay. And then it goes on to say that after the divorce, Gavin and Hillary lived with their mother, who worked three jobs to support them: waitress, secretary, and bookkeeper. She took care of the kids and had to work three jobs. Meanwhile, William Newsom was a judge in the San Francisco courts. I don't want to say deadbeat dad, but if that's true, and they were living as paupers the way that they were, where was William Newsom? But I don't know the ins and outs of their family, so I can't really truly say to that. But let me go on here. It does give a little bit more information about the family. The Newsom family is friends of the Getty family, known for their billion-dollar oil business. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Newsoms had any of that $1 billion, but it goes on and talks about William Newsom's very close relationship with J. Paul Getty, or Gordon Getty, the son of J. Paul Getty. And then it says, due to the close relationship of the two families, the Gettys acted as strong supporters of Gavin Newsom's business ventures and political aspirations. It sounds like they were very close. Okay. The families often went on vacations together, including African safaris and trips to Alaska. So here's the thing, here these paupers living in this little tiny apartment, his sister living in a cutout of the hallway, and yet they were running around in Africa on safaris and trips to Alaska. Some kind of doesn't make sense there. After graduating from college, Newsom opened a wine shop and soon created Plumpjack Management Group, which ran his wine distribution and restaurants. Newsom also invested in a ski resort in Squaw Valley and owns a 53-acre vineyard in Napa. The Getty family helped finance many of Newsom's businesses and later helped contribute to his political campaign for mayor. So yeah, okay, they helped bankroll him a little bit, but he had to have some working capital to start, and he just got out of college. So where did all this money come from? I mean, after all, his mother worked three jobs, and so it sounds to me like Gavin was not quite the pauper growing up that he claims to be. So why does this even matter? Well, I'll tell you why. Because Gavin wants to be president. And I've lived through a lot of presidents and presidential candidates. And let me tell you, the sob stories that come out of them as they try to make you identify with them are almost always false. And from this particular salesman, well, I just don't want anybody buying his brand of snake oil. Just saying. So now here's another big story. There has been an ongoing feud between our country and Canada of late, and many say, and probably rightfully so, started by Donald Trump and his tariffs. But it seems to me that a lot of this has been overblown and made a much bigger thing than it needed to be. And some may say that the Canadians got pretty bent about this, so much so that Mark Carney actually owes his position to Donald Trump. You see, because there was another, Pierre Poilievre, I'm not sure that I pronounced that correctly, but anyway, was actually a front runner for the PMC, and he would have been an excellent PM for the Canadians. Maybe not such a great PM for America, but that doesn't matter because he would have been good for the Canadians, and really any country, the best they could hope for is somebody at the helm that is looking out for their best interest. Now, instead, they elected Mark Carney, who isn't interested in Canada. He hadn't even lived in Canada for quite a while, and yet he comes back to Canada, becomes the liberal darling for the prime ministership. Mark Carney, you could say, fumbled the ball yet again. He enacted the digital services tax on Canadians, and it was regarding to services that were downloaded from America into Canada, and there would be a tax on that. And not very popular with the Canadians. They're already being taxed to death. And yet, here we go, another new tax for them. Well, Donald Trump came back to them and he said, you know what? Here, all of our talks on negotiations of the tariffs, done. We're done. We're walking out. Well, that didn't last very long. In fact, I don't even think it lasted a weekend. Here we go. U.S. Canada to resume trade talks after Ottawa drops the digital tax. The United States will resume trade negotiations with Canada immediately after Ottawa scrapped its digital services tax targeting U.S. technology firms, the White House economic advisor Gavin said on Monday. So here you go again, basically Canada wanting to bully America, but they don't really have a whole lot of room to do so. You see, we're a bigger consumer of their products than they are of ours. So when they try to bully us and we walk away from these tariff talks, well, that kind of hurts Canada more than it does America. So anyway, here we go. Trump had asked Canada to drop the tax at the G7 meeting in Canada earlier in June. And it's something that they say that they've studied, and now they've agreed to do it. And that means that the United States is now once again in negotiations with Canada for the lower tariffs. And that's going to be a good thing. Obviously, the market reacted very positively toward this new development. On Monday, it jumped up precipitously. I don't agree with J.K. Rowling on very many things. However, there is one place which we agree completely upon, and that is I don't believe that men should be competing against women in their sports, taking away their accolades, taking away their scholarships, taking away possibilities for endorsements. All those things get taken away from women when men invade their spaces. And I'm absolutely against it. And in this area, me and J.K. Rowling are completely in agreement. And as a result, I want to start a segment in which I celebrate J.K. Rowling. And no better way to celebrate J.K. Rowling is with her own tweets. This one here is great. Somebody tweeted at her, "Nobody likes your books." And she tweets back, "Well, then thank you to everyone who gave me sympathy royalties." Very kind. And what I love about this tweet is it is indicative of everything that the left does when they get upset. And that is they destroy things. But interestingly enough, they destroy things that they have already bought or that somebody has bought. And as a result, they end up enriching the very person that they're upset about. J.K. Rowling, people burned their books. They already bought those books. More recently, Elon Musk. Oh my gosh, the freak out on Tesla over Elon Musk was incredible. People would go and they would destroy Teslas. Well, all that really did was, if that driver of that Tesla really liked his car, well, then he got insurance money for it. And guess what he did? He went out and bought another Tesla. So you sold another Tesla. The salesman of the year for Tesla should be leftists, because I'm betting that they ended up boosting Tesla's sales quite a bit in both whole cars and parts to repair cars that had to be fixed. So this freak out amongst the left is very funny to me. And this tweet by J.K. Rowling is absolutely the quintessential in-your-face tweet. So this last story that I want to look at is something that is kind of near and dear to my heart, because I am a healthcare professional. And this saddens me, because when I see money that is in healthcare and it is being wasted, then I have to stop and say, oh my gosh, how many people could we have helped with this if we did not waste all this money? And in my many, many years in healthcare, I can relate to you numerous stories of wasted money in healthcare. And so this one made me happy. At the same time, it made me sad. And here it is. I got this one from the Vigilant Fox, which has a great X account where he goes over stories you may have missed. So if you aren't following the Vigilant Fox, then I would follow him. But here we go. $14.6 billion. It was the single biggest healthcare fraud bust in Department of Justice history. Trump's administration is actually fighting back against the criminals who loot our system and steal your tax dollars. And you won't believe who the DOJ says is behind it all. And they're not even from America. So let me go over to this. This is from the Office of Public Affairs, U.S. Department of Justice, and it shows the national healthcare fraud takedown results in 324 defendants charged in connection with over $14.6 billion in alleged fraud. Now, one of the big problems with this fraud is it's nearly irretrievable. Once it gets out there and spent, they can't get it back. They cannot claw that back. So all we end up with is maybe some people in jail. So they really have to be on top of this fraud to stop it in its tracks. This is a place where I think that healthcare needs to be better at. We need to have systems in place to catch this fraud as it's happening before the money goes out. The computer systems within healthcare are outdated, antiquated systems. At my hospital, we still ride. I mean, it's a more modern program, but it still rides on a backbone that's rooted in DOS. DOS. Many of you probably don't even know what DOS is. It's so old. So anyway, here we go. I think that today's takedown was led and coordinated by the Healthcare Fraud Unit of the Department of Justice Criminal Division's Fraud Section. Boy, that's a mouthful. It's a record-setting healthcare fraud takedown. It goes into lots of detail on here, and it's hard to dig out because it's, after all, a government website, and they just go on and on and on. If you want to look it up, it is the Department of Justice Office of Public Affairs. It is on there. But let me go over to Fox News, where they talk a little bit more in English there. The Department of Justice announced sweeping charges Monday against more than 300 defendants, alleging they misled patients into paying for and sometimes receiving medical care that they did not need. And that's really the scary part. It's one thing to have fraudulent billing. It's a victim crime because somebody lost money at the government usually, but it's victimless in that it hasn't touched the patient. But on some of these, they actually get to the patient. And when we do procedures on people that did not need the procedures just so that we could bill them, that is terrible. DOJ Criminal Division Chief Matthew Galetti said defendants also attempted to swindle Medicare and other taxpayer-funded private healthcare insurance programs out of $14.6 billion. And I really like this little card here that they had made up. $14.6 billion in intended fraud loss charged. 15.6 million pills of controlled substances illegally distributed. So what frequently happens is somebody will fraudulently prescribe pills to a person, usually in great quantities. And then that person will go out and then sell those pills. And then the prescriber gets kickbacks for those pills. So this is a way that they can rip off the government. $245 million of cash and other assets were seized. That is just that sounds like a lot of money, but it isn't. When you're talking about $14.6 billion total, 245 is tiny. And that's what I meant. But it's very hard to claw back this money once it's already been out. 324 defendants charged and 96 medical professionals charged. These are people with licenses that are defrauding the system. And in my career, I've known many, many people that defrauded the system. Most of them actually doctors. People trusted these doctors and they defrauded the system. They got busted. I don't want to defame anybody, so I'm not going to talk about it. But I've known many people that have gone to jail or lost their licenses over it. Go over to the Vigilant Fox's website here because I really like what he had to say. They've been tracking transnational criminal organizations exploiting the American health care system on a massive scale. Russian and Pakistani fraudsters were among those accused of literally siphoning money from the American taxpayers. And all of this legalese from the government site, this is what the Vigilant Fox has pulled out of it. Individuals have infiltrated our healthcare system to steal American taxpayer dollars. One scheme was particularly audacious. We dismantled a scheme involving a sophisticated operation run from Russia and Eastern Europe that strategically bought dozens of medical supply companies inside the United States and submitted more than $10 billion in fraudulent healthcare claims to Medicare. This is money directly stolen from the senior citizens of America, because when that money isn't there and you need care, that's huge. And they talk, there's a whole bunch of talk in Washington right now about this big bill of Donald Trump's and about it's going to slash healthcare. Well, there's a lot of talk back and forth that yes it will or no it won't. But here's the thing. If we could control this, then we can make sure that we don't need those big budgets. We can control the fraud in the system. We don't need the big budgets. We just need to take care of people. I'm pleased to report that federal agents intercepted and arrested key members of that organization at U.S. airports and the U.S.-Mexico border, cutting off their intended escape routes. This is one of the reasons why it's important to have a secure southern border, northern border too, for that matter. But having that secure border means that we can control who crosses that border and we can catch these people as they try to flee out of the country. And that's always been a big problem. As soon as you go to try to bust somebody, boom, they're over the border in a heartbeat and you can't get to them. At the end of this article on on the Vigilant Fox, was a quote by Dr. Oz. And Dr. Oz is not really my favorite guy. He's not my favorite guy. But I do like what he has to say here. Finally, Dr. Oz shined a light on the even bigger problem lurking behind the fraud, outright abuse and waste in the healthcare system. And I'll leave you with one last thought, he said. In addition to the massive fraud, especially from foreign entities trying to invade America using their financial tools and criminal mindsets, we also have 25% of all of our money being spent probably subject to abuse. 25% is what they're looking at. 25% of the entire budget. That's not fraud, it's abuse and waste. That's money that's not being used wisely. And this is what Doge was trying to get into. All the money that's out there, and it is not being spent wisely. So, last thing I want to leave you with is this incredibly awesome piece of footage that I found on X. This just blew me away. Yeah, that is incredible. Look at that. Well, okay. Well, until next time, guys, keep your feet on the ground.